Hello, Starshine. My name is Liz, and this is my channel, Simsational Stories. If you have not seen my videos before, and you enjoy this one, please like and subscribe, and maybe check out my other social media as well. I'm on both Facebook and Twitter. All relevant links are in the description below, and of course, if you're a Sims player and you'd like to download any of my characters, just search the hashtag Simsational Stories on the Sims 4 gallery. All original content is created by This Is Not Eric. Finally, before I begin my Simsational story, I'd like to issue this blanket content and trigger warning. The following story is just Sims, hey. I'm not going to apologise for treating them terribly, if that's what I've done. But I do want to assure you now that although I mean absolutely no harm, I completely understand if you feel unable to consume my content. Many loves, and we will catch each other on the internet elsewhere. Okay, so now we've gotten that over with. Let's go. Today's story is from Blanchard the Bachelor, and we're at chapter 3. If you have not seen previous chapters and would like to catch up, there are playlists available on my channel so you can hear the entire story in chronological order. The rest of us are going to move on from where we left off last time though. So without further ado. Greta had gotten married at 19 years old to the man she'd assumed was her one true love, Blanchard Bridges. Their son Octavian was born just 5 months after their shotgun wedding, and together they'd raised him in what she had thought was a relatively happy home, right up until she was 7 months pregnant with their second child, and her husband had left her. To add insult to injury, Blanchard hadn't just left her. He'd left her for a younger woman. Morgan Fires was just 18 years old, a full decade younger than her new lover, and she was brazen enough to dare to come with Blanchard when he came to sign the divorce papers Greta had organised after he had snuck out of their home in the middle of the night. Morgan didn't care about any of that drama. She was in love. Blanchard was such a great guy. She knew there was an age difference, a whole 10 years. But when you were on the same page the way they were, age was just a number. They'd moved in together over in Evergreen Harbour, and things were going great. If he was being honest with himself, Blanchard felt a little bad for how things had worked out, but he had a right to be happy. Life with his family in the suburbs had been hell, and this awesome little bachelor pad he'd finally got for himself was awesome. And yeah, okay, he had Morgan there a lot right now. She practically lived with him, but that was only temporary. She'd be heading to college soon. Meanwhile, back in Windenburg, Blanchard's ex-wife Greta had given birth to their second child, a daughter she named Roxanne. The little girl had porcelain white skin paired with deep, dark brown eyes and hair. Greta texted Blanchard about the birth, but he didn't reply or come to visit. That part of his life was well and truly over now. Blanchard was busy building a new world and story for himself, one that didn't include the ball and chain of a wife and children. His new young girlfriend, Morgan Fires, only had a few months before she was due to head off to college, and the couple were making the best of things while they had the time. Of course, Morgan had idealistic dreams of her and Blanchard withstanding the test of time. She knew that they would be fighting against the odds, and that long-distance relationships almost never worked out, but surely they could be different. They shared so much that was so good and true. That had to mean something. Morgan believed in their love. Therefore, it was with a heart full of hope and faith that Morgan Fires sent in her application to the University of Britchester. She hoped to study communications, but would take whatever she got, honestly. She was just so excited to go. Morgan was an outgoing young girl who loved making new friends, and she looked forward to life on campus. Unfortunately for Morgan, once she arrived in Britchester, she realised just how very much she missed Blanchard and how truly alone she felt without him. It had been a whirlwind 6 months since they had gotten together, and they'd spent almost every day of it together. Now that she was on her own, she missed him terribly. Blanchard came to visit as often as he could, of course, but they were always such short visits. He was also always so tired from the drive over, and then later, in such a hurry to get back home to work that Morgan felt like they almost never made it out of her dorm room. Morgan swore they hadn't been on a real date since she came to university. At this stage in his life, Blanchard was busy bartending in the city. It was the first job he'd ever found that he actually liked. It didn't hurt that he'd been a raging alcoholic for a few years now and had mastered the art of mixology just throughout the course of his daily life choices. The hours were good for him too. He was able to sleep in every day, yet still make it to work and party afterwards. It was a dream job. He wasn't partying alone either. Blanchard worked with an absolute goddess of a woman in the form of aspiring model Zoe Scott. With a lithe body, shining chestnut hair, and bright eyes, Zoe defined temptation for Blanchard. They worked 6 nights a week with one another at the bar, and it wasn't long before his eyes started to wander. Zoe came over one sunny Tuesday afternoon. They had Tuesdays off, to hang out. She was 23 years old and kind of amused by Blanchard. At nearly 30 years old, she considered him to be basically middle-aged, especially given the whole recent divorce and kids off in the suburbs. And she couldn't lie. It kind of turned her on. One thing soon led to another, and the next thing she knew, Zoe had followed Blanchard to his bedroom, and they were making out on his bed. She was pretty drunk, but so was he. And if she was being honest, this was why she'd come over. They both knew it. Clothes were flying all over the room. They were skin to skin. It was on. A couple of hours later, and a drowsy Zoe woke up in Blanchard's bed. She could hear him snoring lightly next to her, and she smiled, thinking back on their hasty lovemaking. Maybe they'd go again when he woke up. She opened her eyes, and then she needed to pee, sat up out of bed, and began to look around the room. It was a typical bachelor bedroom, beige and blue in colouring, with a small desk and laptop in the corner, some clothes in the wardrobe, shoes on the ground. Nothing out of the ordinary, she'd thought to herself, until she'd turned around and saw the photos. She'd known about his ex-wife and children, of course. There were photos in the lounge room, and she recognised one from there. But who was this other woman? It was obviously Blanchard's girlfriend. He had a girlfriend. She, Zoe, was the other woman. She couldn't believe it. She hadn't wanted to date Blanchard herself, of course. It had just been a one-night stand that, if it was good, and it had been, might turn into a repeat affair. But not now. Oh no, Zoe couldn't do that. She wouldn't be a part of this. She snuck out of Blanchard's bed and life, quitting the bar that day and never coming back. Blanchard never told Morgan about what had happened. He was a big fan of not causing himself unnecessary trouble, and what did it matter anyhow? Zoe was gone now, and Morgan was away at college herself still. She was probably doing the exact same thing as what he'd done. They hooked up from time to time, sure, but it was nothing serious. And that brings us to the end of Chapter 3 of Blanchard the Bachelor. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can tune in soon to hear the next chapter. And hey, maybe think about sharing my channel with a friend. Or don't. It's your life. Anyway, bye!